A former right-wing Brazilian president Jair Bolsonaro have flooded the streets of cities across the nation ahead of the verdict into his alleged plotting of a coup after his 2022 election loss. The protest took place on Brazilian Independence Day, with Bolsonaro's supporters slamming the left-wing current president, Luiz Inacio Lula da Silva, and the Brazilian Supreme Court.
Estamos contigo, Eduardo Bolsonaro. Não esmoreça, não recue, não fraqueja. Deus vai te usar aí, Eduardo Bolsonaro. Receba aí o calor e o amor do povo brasileiro. Eduardo! E o dia hoje, gente, o dia hoje está magnífico.
The former president took to X to show his appreciation of the supporters, saying, "Pro-freedom protests on Brazil's Independence Day. Thank you, Pastor, and everyone out on the streets of Brazil for your strength. This is all for us. I have really a lot of faith that we will come out victorious. But more importantly, I am certain that we are fighting on the right side. The fruits will come naturally and we will win." Protesters waved Brazilian flags in addition to American flags to show support for Donald Trump, who called the trial against Bolsonaro a witch hunt.
But they haven't found him guilty, have they? But have they found him guilty? No. Look, here's the thing. President Bolsonaro is a good man. I've gotten to know a lot of prime ministers and presidents and kings and queens. And I know him, and I'm pretty good at this. President Bolsonaro is not a dishonest man. He loves the people of Brazil. He fought hard for the people of Brazil. He negotiated trade deals against me for the people of Brazil, and he was very tough. And he was tough because he wanted to do a good deal for his country. He was not a dishonest man. And I believe it's a witch hunt, and it shouldn't be happening.
Trump was so critical of the case against Bolsonaro that he slapped Brazil with 50% tariffs and placed sanctions on the judge overseeing the case in July, according to the New York Times. Journalist and host of System Update, Glenn Greenwald, doubled down on Trump's comments, saying Bolsonaro will be convicted because the trial was bereft of credibility from the start.
The verdict is, no matter what, going to be questioned and bereft of credibility from the start, because instead of putting it before the entire Supreme Court, they only decided to give it to half of the Supreme Court, and that half, who will decide if Bolsonaro is guilty and if he goes to prison, is composed of one judge who is Lula's longtime personal lawyer, who he put on the Supreme Court, so that's one of the judges of the five. Then you have Lula's longtime friend and political ally, who was his justice minister, who will also put on the Supreme Court. That's two of the five judges who will judge if Bolsonaro is guilty. And then third is Moraes, who is monomaniacally devoted to destroying the entire Bolsonaro movement and putting all of its adherents and defenders and spokespeople in prison and banning them from the internet. And so it's automatic that Bolsonaro will get convicted, because just by basis of these three judges alone, who would never vote to acquit him because their loyalty is to Lula.
Bolsonaro's supporters were so enamored with Trump that they unfurled a huge American flag in the middle of the protest this weekend, as well as a giant inflatable Trump doll. Bolsonaro took to X again to applaud the Trump supporters in Brazil, saying dictatorships are usually brought down from the outside in, because inside them tyrants censor any tool that could make them lose power. This is why on Brazil's Independence Day, people took to the streets to break the official narrative that Donald Trump has no standing in Brazil and that there is an ongoing American attack against national sovereignty. No, Brazilians no longer need the prostitutes of the legacy media, heavily paid with taxpayer money to get informed. And yes, we are an educated people who know how to thank those who help us in the war to reclaim our freedoms and democracy. Thank you very much, President Donald J. Trump, for working to fix the mess left behind by your predecessor. And whilst Trump and Bolsonaro are seemingly the best of friends, the current Brazilian president, Luiz Inacio Lula da Silva, slammed his US counterpart.
Então, o que está acontecendo?
So what is happening?
A forma
The civilized way for two heads of state to negotiate is to have the will to take the decision along with Brazil.
do Brasil, ele poderia ter comunicado ao Brasil.
He could have communicated with Brazil. He could have called. He could have proposed a negotiation. But we received the taxation statement in a completely authoritarian manner, and we are not used to negotiating in this way. Not like this.
Lula is distancing Brazil from the US and pushes sovereignty for Brazil against Trump.
Vamos recorrer
We will pursue all available measures, starting with the WTO, to defend our interests.
para defender os nossos interesses. Aliás,
In fact, the government had already been working to strengthen our foreign trade and create new opportunities for domestic companies since before the change in administration in the US.
vou ligar para o Trump para conversar.
I'm not going to call Trump about trade because he doesn't want to talk. But you can be sure I'm going to call Trump to invite him to come to the COP because I want to know what he thinks about the climate issue. I'll be kind enough to call.